Continuous improvement comes in lots of different flavors and styles. I'm Bella Engelbach, and I'm inviting you to journey with me to the edges of lean. Episode 92, Continuous Improvement and Getting Published with Karl Beckstrand. Are you thinking of writing a book? Have you authored a book? Do you wonder about the process of getting your book out in the world? College media instructor Karl Beckstrand is the best-selling author and illustrator of 27 multicultural, multilingual books. Karl is here at the Edges of Lean to help us take advantage of his lessons learned with writing and publishing. Karl Beckstrand, welcome to the Edges of Lean.
Thank you, Bella. Thanks for having me.
Karl, tell us about yourself and a little bit about your life story.
So I grew up in San Jose, California, very cosmopolitan area. I've lived abroad. I was in South America for a couple of years on a church mission. I've traveled a lot, been blessed to see lots of different cultures, work with lots of different cultures. I have an undergraduate degree in journalism and a master's in political science and conflict resolution. And I have 27 published books, and I like to make them multicultural wherever possible.
That's great. So tell me, the books that you have published, who are they for? Who's your audience?
So I've written in lots of different genres. I would say the majority of my books are for juveniles. I have a lot of Spanish, English, bilingual picture books. I have a Western novel. I have self-help. I have short stories. So a lot of things.
So, and with 27 books then, have you published them in different ways? Some gone with a traditional publisher and self-publishing. Tell me about that.
Yes. So I've worked with a couple of publishers early on a couple of books, and then decided that I had learned enough and had enough hard experiences with publishers that I decided to start my own publishing company. So most of my books are self-published, and I also distribute a couple other authors.
Okay. So when you say you start your own publishing company, that is a company that's focused mostly on publishing Karl.
Yes, that's
Okay.
Premio Books.
Okay. So I know some people who listen to the Edges of Lean, some of them are published authors, and many are interested in becoming published authors. And the big question that people start with is, how do I get published? You know, assuming that you figured out how to write something. How do I get published? And so what are the big differences between working with a publisher and self-publishing?
So the big publishers have prestige. They used to have a monopoly on distribution as well, but they don't anymore. Early on in my company, I was able to get agreements with Ingram, Baker and Taylor, Follett, the big book distributors or wholesalers. And so the big publishing houses don't have a monopoly on that. You can be a self-published author and get that distribution as well. There are pros and cons for both. If you want to be published through a regular publishing house and have that prestige, you'll want to get an agent, because most of those big publishers don't even look at manuscripts that aren't submitted through an agent. So find an agent in your genre who's had success. And it takes a long time. It takes a long time to get your book out, to find an agent, to have the agent pitch it, to have the publishing house look at it. And then even if they accept it, it'll be another year or so before your book is out. So the advantage to self-publishing is it's quicker, and you control your own marketing, which is usually better than what the publishers do. And you control the content, and you control the money. You don't have that middleman taking a lot of the money.
Yeah. And I have to say, my experience in publishing a book was that, because it was a first book and possibly an only book, who knows, I did not know anything about the process. I was completely naive as to the process. And so it was wonderful for me to work with somebody else who would say, all right, this is what you do first. This is what you do next. This is how it gets reviewed. This is how it gets copy edited. What I discovered, that my big sort of aha was, once the book was out there, a lot of the marketing really depended on me. And I was sort of under the impression that they would help me more with that. And they didn't. So why is that? Why do you think a publisher, they're spending a lot of money to get books through their process?
Mhm.
Why do they not really help with the publishing as much? With the marketing?
Yeah, I think it's short-sighted. I had the same experience. I expected my first publishers, to do more marketing, and they did very little, and stopped after just a little while. And I learned that that's typical. That publishers will market a book a little bit at first, and then they will never market it again. And that's the key difference between what I do and what they do. And that is, I'm always marketing my books. In fact, I market my first book as if it's brand new today. It's 20 years old, and I still market it like it's new. And it's still selling.
Wow. Wow, that's really interesting. So just because I think we also have the idea, like the latest new book is the one that, that should be marketing. But what you're saying is you have a book that's 20 years old, and you're still selling it. I mean, you're still marketing it, and people are still buying it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had sort of an aha about that, Karl. It's new to those people, right? The people who didn't see it 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. It's new to those people. They don't actually know.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter to them.
I should clarify that it is expected, even if you get a big publishing contract with a big publisher, it is expected that you would be the principal marketer, because as the author, you know your book best, and you know best how to reach the target audience. But it is nice when they help.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a bit more about just how prolific you are, Karl, and what inspires you to get a book started. How do you move forward with that?
It's not something that I work at. I get ambushed by book ideas, story ideas.
Yeah.
They'll wake me up at night. They'll catch me anywhere, and they don't leave me alone until I write them down. I talk to many people, obviously, about publishing, and sometimes say, "Oh, I've always wanted to write a book." And I'll say, "Really? Tell me your idea." And sometimes people will say, "Well, I don't have one." And inside I think, "Oh," because for me, I just have ideas coming more than I'll ever get to publish.
But then you're taking the next step, which is you're sitting down and actually doing something about it. So it's when you have this idea, is it the idea for a subject matter, for a story, or for an audience, or do they all come together?
Yes, sometimes I get an entire story all at once, and sometimes I'll just get little snippets or ideas or things that I would add to a story or that would enrich a story. It just depends. Sometimes I will have a concept come, and I'll write something down, and I have file folders full of ideas. And so if I ever do feel like I need to add something extra to a book, I can go to those folders and look through those things and augment what I'm working on.
Right. But it sounds to me as if, you've got that ideator brain, right? So it's going to be, those ideas are going to keep on firing. And I think I do think it's interesting. I've had the same conversation with people, and people say, "Oh, I'd love to write a book." And then, well, about what? Well, I don't know yet, which I have to be honest, was kind of the way I was too. But then when I really, when it really came to me, it was actually kind of hard to stop. I had to move forward with it. Right.
Yeah, and everybody does have a story within them, something you've experienced or learned. You hear the phrase, "Make a message from your mess."
I like that. Make a message from your mess.
Yeah.
So how long does it take you to write a book?
It depends. Once I wrote an entire picture book in 20 minutes, but then, I just
Do you
finished
illustrate as well, or do you work with an illustrator?
I do. I've studied art, but I'm not a professional artist, so I typically leave illustration to the pros. But I have illustrated a few of my own.
Oh, cool. Cool.
But yeah, sometimes I just finished the self-help book that took a couple of years to write. It was a lot of work.
Yeah. And what's your process like? Is it the same for every book, or?
No.
No?
No, like I say, sometimes the entire story comes all at once. Sometimes I'll just have
Uh-huh.
a concept that I'll just scribble down, and then over time I'll add to it and develop it and then work on, the beginning, a middle, and an end, that kind of thing. Make sure that it has that, and then fill it all in.
And how do you know when it's done?
So, yeah, this last book, I thought it was done like 8 different times. And each time somebody would proofread it or be a beta reader for me and come back and say, "Well, what about this?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah."
Mhm.
And then I had, 4 different huge editing processes with 4 different editors, and um, learned so much, from each of those edits. And finally did get to a place where I was like, yeah, it's finally done. In fact, I was patting myself on the back the other day because typically after a book is published, I'll think of other things that I could have included. But this one, I think, is because so many people helped me. I still look at it and say, yep, it's complete. There's nothing missing.
This is the self-help book.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's it called?
It's called Abundant Paths. It's an LGBTQ self-help book. It's, beyond either or thinking for fulfilling same-sex relationships.
Oh, lovely, lovely. And so this took you a couple of years to write. Um, and you talked about you just said four editors. You were
Edits.
four
Yeah.
different editors. So and these were editors as opposed to beta readers or just friends, friends you say, yeah, please read it and tell me what you think. So this was real editing.
And real
Did you
money
ask
that I paid.
real money? I
Lots
bet.
of money. Sorry.
That's fine. But so did you ask them specifically to edit for specific things? Why did you decide to have four different editors work on it?
Actually, I didn't. It's just the
You didn't.
process. Yeah, I went to
Uh-huh.
this editing company that was referred to me, and they said, okay, well, first you'll need an evaluator to help you make sure that the structure is good.
Uh-huh.
And then you'll need someone to edit the content. And then you'll need someone to do the line editing, spelling, punctuation, and grammar. Um, and then there was the layout process, so that
Oh yeah.
the book designer had to go through and make sure that it was looking right.
Yeah. So those were wow, that's really interesting. And I think particularly because this is a book for young people, right? But it just I think the book design is something that I wasn't familiar with. I've read a few books in my life, right? But it had never occurred to me that the design, the layout, the space, how much space is on the page, the font, the headings, so all of that could really make the difference for some readers or for many readers as to the readability and the usefulness of
Yeah.
a book and a
People
complete
people really judge a book by its cover.
yeah, yeah. And so in each of those editing processes, then you said you learned something. What was your takeaway from each of them?
Oh, well, from the overall process, I learned to be more patient because each time, when you have a book that you're going to market, you have to make a marketing calendar and you set a date for release.
Uh-huh.
And and after I contracted with this editing company, I set my date for, I don't know, 5 months in the future. I thought that was plenty of time. It
Uh-huh.
ended up
But
taking 6 or 7 months to finish everything. And I kept having to push my release date out. And that was such a painful learning experience. But it was worth it. I mean, the input that I got from the editors, just getting their different perspectives, helping me to be sensitive to my audience, helping me to be clear and have a good flow. All those things were really great learning experiences.
and that's stuff you can take to book number 28, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and tell me about the bilingual books. How do you do those? Do you find Spanish editors to work with?
Yes. So I learned Spanish. My mom spoke Spanish to us when we were kids. She was a
Uh-huh.
gringo, but she, loved to study Spanish. And that I lived in South America for a couple of years, and I'm nearly fluent, but I still have to have native professional editors make sure that my grammar and everything is correct. Um, I don't, you don't want to put a book out that's poorly written.
Right, right. You don't want to have the Chevy Nova
Yeah,
problem, where you're basically saying the opposite of what you wanted to say.
right.
Carl, could you take us through then? We've talked about what you've done, a little bit of what you've done about your most recent book, but take us through what self-publishing involves. And I would love if you could talk about the financial side of each step as well, because I think it's important for people to understand that.
Sure. Writing a book is free. It doesn't really cost you anything
Other
until,
than time.
yeah, and other than time and blood and sweat and tears.
Yeah.
But you do need to hire a professional editor. Even though I have picture books, I still have people edit those. You've got to have a professional make sure that it's written well. If it's not written well, it just won't sell. It won't do well.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the first expense, besides time, is to pay an editor. And then the real expense with publishing comes after it's out, and that's the marketing. I've spent money on marketing companies, some for good, some for bad. I've paid for Amazon ads, which was a very painful learning experience.
Was it valuable at all to do that? Did it help?
It did. My Amazon ads are now profitable, but it took a couple of years. So it was
Wow, a lot of learning cycles. In Lean, we talk about learning cycles all the time. So you must have had a lot of learning cycles with that.
Yeah. And in fact, to publish, there's something called print on demand where you don't have to handle books. You upload a file to Amazon's KDP or Ingram, Spark, or Lightning Source, and the book doesn't exist until customers click on it and order it. And then it prints and ships to the customer and you don't touch it, but you get a royalty. And so even that process can be free. Ingram charges a little bit, but Amazon print on demand is free. So even publishing your book is free. But if you want it to sell, you got to market it.
And so you see that's where the big investment is in the marketing. What have you learned about marketing then in doing this? And this is just to rewind just for a second. What we're saying is, even if you publish with a traditional publisher, you still have to be, as you said, the primary market of the book. So
Yes.
what's Karl's? Maybe this is your next book, Karl's 10 lessons on how to market your book.
Sure. So the first thing we've already covered is that it's well edited, well written, well edited. The other thing, again, a good cover, a good descriptive title so people know what it's about, and subtitle, the description, and then reviews. You want to have reviews. I've noticed a trend, as my reviews go up, so do my sales.
And so when you say reviews, is that the reviews on Amazon or on Barnes and Noble or wherever the book is being sold, where people are saying, yeah, this is a great book. I loved it. It was helpful to me. My kid loved it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's two ways to get reviews. And that's one, you can solicit them directly from individuals. And you can offer them, like a free ebook if they'll review it. And then there's large review companies like Kirkus, the Horn Book, Library Journal, Publishers Weekly. And those are often companies you have to pay to get a review for. Now, there's kind of a tricky thing with Amazon because they say they don't accept paid reviews. But what they're talking about is like if you go to Fiverr.com or some company in the Philippines and pay them to put reviews on your product, Amazon frowns on that, and they can punish you big time.
Yeah, and you could actually pick those reviews out, right? Because they're often one review is very similar to the next review. They have the same misspellings, and it's clear they haven't read the book.
Right, but the big ones that I mentioned, like Publishers Weekly, everybody knows who they are. Library Journal, the Horn Book, who else? Forward Reviews. These big organizations are known to Amazon, and those kinds of paid reviews are welcome.
Because they know that the reviewers will have actually read the book and
and
they're sincere.
And they're sincere.
And they're sincere. Yeah. So that helps people once they found the book on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or wherever, whatever bookseller site, decide is this the book I want to buy. But how do they find it in the first place?
So Amazon lets you choose keywords and categories to put your book into the right niche, into the right to the right audience. They allow you to choose 7 keywords, and those can be phrases. Those should be keyword phrases, not just one word. And you want to be as specific as possible. And then also categories. There are thousands of Amazon categories, it seems. But if you choose the most relevant, pertinent categories, even with a couple of sales, your book can be number 1 in its category. And Amazon will help you. They'll see that and smile upon you. So choose your categories carefully and be as narrow and specific as possible. And again, with just a few sales, you can rank in that category.
And that individual category. And then if somebody's searching in that category, then that your book might pop up for them as a as a possibility. You might get one of those customers who bought this also bought that.
Right.
Yeah. So that's very helpful on the Amazon side.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that people struggle with, and I know because I've talked to people about this, is on the marketing side. When you're selling your book, you're really selling yourself, right? You're talking about yourself. It's not just your subject or your characters. You're talking about yourself and selling yourself. When you started doing this, did you have any issues saying, "Hey, I'm Karl and I wrote this great book"?
Yes. In fact, I still struggle with that.
Do you?
In fact, every author should keep that timidity, because your friends really do get wary of you promoting your book and yourself. So I have to pull
if you
back.
want to keep friends, hold back a little bit.
Yeah, you have to be judicious. So like even on social media, I try to have like, I don't know, 10 social media posts for every 1 book promotion post. Because if every single post of mine was about me or my book, people would just stop looking at them.
Yeah. But you have to, like as you said, you are the primary promoter. You're the one who's going to sell this book. Nobody else is going to care about it as much as you do. So you have to keep doing it. Yeah.
And there's other ways to market. You can do email campaigns. Those are still very relevant, especially if you are specific about your target audience that you're emailing. You can
do you keep an email list of you?
I do. I have email lists of librarians, of educators, of bookstores. So, and I try not to bombard them with emails. I try to only email when I have a new release or something important to tell them about.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, so just as you would be marketing any other kind of product, you want to keep in touch with, or at least know something about who's in your audience and who might be likely to buy the book.
And you can still write press releases. Those are still relevant. That's free advertising. If you follow up on a press release, you're more likely to get interviewed, on radio or TV or for newspapers or magazines. So that traditional advertising is still very relevant.
Yeah. How much of your day does it take for you to do the kind of marketing you're talking about?
Yeah. So when
we're talking about cost, folks, so let's talk about that, because time is money. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, when people learn that I'm a writer, they imagine me sitting at my desk all day writing stories. It's really a couple of hours of writing every day and maybe 4, 5, 6 hours of marketing.
Okay. All right. Wow, that is a really, that's a proportion that is quite astounding, I think.
I'm sorry, I'm more heavy of a marketer than the average author. The average author does maybe 60% writing, 40% marketing.
40%. Yeah. But it just, again, for those of you who are listening and thinking about, gee, I'd love to write a book. A book is great, knowing that people are reading it and learning from it and having that mental conversation with you, and perhaps even a real conversation with you. There's nothing so much fun as having someone actually reach out to you and say, "Hey, I read your book. I love it." And I'd like to talk about it some more. In order for those things to happen, they have to know about the book, right? And so as you're thinking about, I'd love to have that book also be thinking about, well, what are you going to do to make sure that people who would love to have the book that you would love to write are going to know about it and be able to find it and buy it and get it from you. Yeah. Very important things to think about. So we talked a little bit before about some of the what we in Lean would call the learning cycles of marketing, as you learn about marketing, and particularly when you were talking about advertising on Amazon. Do you have in your mind a learning process? How do you look at things? Do you look at things as experiments, or how do you think about this?
Boy, that's an excellent question. It's funny because when I was a kid, I didn't like math. I wasn't good at it. And there were certain things that I just avoided because I wasn't good at them. And thank heaven my brain, I don't know, developed a little bit more as I became an adult. And I found that as I tried new things, I was able to do them. I'm certainly not excellent in many things, but I feel competent in many things. So I'm my own accountant, I'm my own marketer, I'm my own legal counsel, which is kind of scary. But yeah, you can develop skills, and where you don't have the skills, you can also hire someone to do what you don't know how to do. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
Well, I'm just saying, so every time you try something, right, there's a possibility that your hypothesis about how it was going to work is correct or it's not correct, right?
Right.
And I think with some people, they go into that, they try something, it doesn't work, and their reaction is, oh my goodness, it didn't work. I was an idiot. I'm a terrible person. Or they maybe shift to blame and say, well, somebody else screwed this up, so on and so forth. And so it feels like failure. But the other approach is then, how do I look at this as, well, I've never done this before. I don't know exactly how it's supposed to work. I don't know the whole environment in which I'm doing this. I mean, this was clearly you going into Amazon and having ads on Amazon. That's probably a lot of unknowns there. Therefore, I may be right or I may be wrong. If I'm right, yay. If I'm wrong, wait, that's awesome because I learned something.
Yes.
And that's a different, when we talk about in lean thinking, we talk about, and we talk about continuous improvement. It's a lot about that. It's like say, well, we're not like setting out to deliberately fail and make mistakes that we already made those mistakes. We're not going to remake those mistakes, but we know that not all of our mental hypotheses are correct, and we're going to learn from the ones that are wrong, and then just go and try something else. And so I was wondering, do you think about all these things that you try in that way? I'm just curious.
Yes, lately I have.
Yeah.
When I say Amazon advertising was a painful experience, it really was, but it's true. I learned a lot. And I think it's extremely rare to find someone who succeeds on their first try at anything. And that when you see a successful person, it's because they have a lot of failures under their belt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. And failures that they've learned from, right? Because if you can certainly experience failure and then shift into blame or shift in whatever, some other frame of mind, and then not learn from it,
right,
and not try the next thing. Yeah. So and it's interesting to me because one of the things about this particular podcast, The Edges of Lean, is not just about talking to people who practice lean thinking and do continuous improvement as an approach that they've learned or they've been trained on, but to talk to people like you, Karl, who are doing things perhaps they've never done before, getting better and better at them each time, and finding, well, how do you think about that? What is your approach? How do you get from, I don't know anything about this, to, hey, I finally accomplished it?
We're living in a wonderful age where you can just go online and look up something you don't know.
Yeah.
And yes, you do want to have a little bit of wisdom, because there are some things that you really should consult a professional about. For example, I said I'm my own legal counsel, but I should also add the caveat, important caveat, that I have in the past picked the brains of lawyers to make
Uh-huh.
sure that I wasn't putting my whole livelihood in jeopardy.
Right,
So
right.
there are
And
occasions, based on the stakes, I guess, where you do want a professional and are should even be willing to pay them for their services.
as you were talking about with editing, and that's and having that outside, and particularly having that outsider come in and look at something from a different perspective, from your own perspective.
Right.
That's valuable, and over and above the skill that they bring as well. That it's that extra perspective. Yeah, yeah. So tell me also, you when you I'm curious about when you write for young people, for children,
Mhm.
and how when you say picture books, in that case, you're probably talking about very small
Very
children.
young. Mhm.
Do you include kids in your beta readers?
Oh, I've never been asked that, and I'm trying to think. I think early on I did have my
Uh-huh.
nieces and nephews read my books and give me feedback, and they're all adults now. So
Uh-huh. So they grew out of that role.
yeah, that's an important question. That's Bella, you've made me reevaluate my process because, yeah, if the kid doesn't like it, it's not going to do well. I actually have tended to write for the parents or for the adults that are
Uh-huh.
with the child because I think everybody who's ever read a boring book to a child knows how much torture that is.
Yeah.
And
Particularly when they want the book reread
yes.
to them.
And so I always try to make sure that what I have in my book is not going to put the adult to sleep. I even put little things in there that only adults will get. So,
That's That's what my son and daughter-in-law love about the TV show Bluey, which is a cartoon about, I guess it's about it's a dog family in Australia. I've actually never watched it, but they tell me how much they love the things that are in there that are for the adults, that
yeah,
go right over the kids' head. And I totally appreciate that, because I remember reading to my kids, and there were just some books that's just like, I cannot stand this book. And sometimes they were just badly written, right? They were hard to read aloud because I think the author had never actually tried to read them
allowed. Yeah.
aloud. Yeah. And there were other books that were just, that rolled off the tongue and were easy for the kids to memorize, and they could then pretend they were reading them themselves. And those are the books that we really did read over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so I appreciate that you think of the parents. And I think the parents are the purchasers, in most
Yes.
cases, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So
funny. As an author of children's books, my target audience is parents, educators, and librarians.
uh-huh.
My target audience isn't children. But you're right. I should keep them in mind and make sure that they like the book too.
Well, yeah, well, that would be something you'd find out too after you published it.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. I love the book, but my kid hated it. Yeah,
Mm.
but I doubt that's the case. When you're writing a book for young people or for children, do you recall young Karl? Is that in your mind?
Oh, yeah. In fact, many
Yeah.
of my books are written from my own experience. The first book I ever wrote, Sounds in the House, a Mystery, is all the things that I experienced as a kid that would scare me at night, or keep me awake.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. Yeah. So you really were in the mind of the child, when you wrote it.
Yeah, I hope I was.
Yeah. Yeah. Carl, what do you see? I'm asking you to, look into your crystal ball a little bit. What do you see happening as we move forward into this world of self-publishing, of the publish on demand? I'm not going to ask you about AI, because that's a whole other
Oh boy. Yeah.
story there. I bet there's AI reviews out there, though. I'm sure that there are already.
AI is
Um,
writing books now.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. But what do you think is going to be happening next, as in
Wow.
publishing?
I think self-publishing exploded a few years back,
Uh-huh.
with the new technology available. And so everybody and their brother published a book. And I think it's going to calm down a little bit, and the quality is already improving big time because people who had hard knocks in writing their own book and publishing or marketing their own book have learned a few things,
Uh-huh.
learned what sells, what audiences like. And so I think the options are only getting better. Um, and so we're not totally buried with mediocrity. I think really fine writing is out there and is not as hard to find as it was a few years ago. So technology is changing things a lot too. I do not see children's books, for example, doing well because of children. Only I see children's books only surviving if adults are promoting them actively with kids, educators, librarians, parents.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I only see them used because an adult says, this is something that is worthwhile. Let me show you how it's worthwhile.
Yeah. Or even how do you interact with it? How do you do it?
Right.
Yeah, I actually I was having a conversation with my grandkids yesterday, and I was asking them, bunch of strange questions. And one of the questions I asked them was about book banning and about the library at their school. And I said, what do you think about the library? Do you think that there are books that they should not allow to have in the library? And they both said, oh no, absolutely not. So all the books should be in the library. And my grandson, who's 9, said there should be more books in the library.
Yeah.
And my granddaughter said something that was even more interesting. This is what you get with this podcast, Grandma Stories. She said, there should be more old books in the library. She said, I thought that was interesting. Yeah. She said, people like to take out the new books. She said, but I like the old books. They have good stories.
The classics.
And I don't know, and for the mind of an 11-year-old, exactly what she means by an old book. I don't think she's talking about Shakespeare, but that was just a really interesting comment. But they, for them, going to the library is like one of the best parts of the week, and they really look forward to it. And
I have kind of a double opinion, a two-minded opinion on the book banning. I think book banning is always a bad idea, but I think people are unaware that libraries have always banned. That's the wrong word. Selected.
They've curated.
They're curating. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what a librarian does. Yes.
Yeah. And schools and libraries and even families naturally omit some books by the books that they choose. They have limited budgets, limited space.
Yeah.
So in publishing, we know that a bad book will die by itself. So there's no pass laws or policies that restrict books, because those bad ideas will just die. They just do.
Yeah.
But it's really budgets and space that limit what's chosen, and priorities. The priority is, I want my child to learn about this more than I want them to learn about that.
Right. Yeah. When you have a 9-year-old who all he wants to do is read about dinosaurs. And I actually think that's okay. Let him read about dinosaurs until he's had enough, and then he'll find something else to read. Yeah. Or maybe he really will become a paleontologist. Who knows? Anyway, enough grandma stories. So Karl, how can people find you if they want to have more of a conversation with you?
So the easiest way is to just Google Karl Beckstrand, Karl with a K.
Karl with a K.
My books are on Amazon, Walmart, Target sites, and then my website is premiobooks.com.
Okay. Can you say that again one more time?
Premio Books. It's P as in Paul, REMIO books.com.
Premiobooks.com. That's great. Wow. I have to say that it's really a pleasure to talk to someone who has found the thing that they love to do and is doing it and keeps on doing it. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Tell me, Karl, what would be your one piece of advice for a young person starting out?
As a writer, or?
Yeah, your choice. You tell me what you want to. Gosh, your one piece of advice.
I would say you are capable of much more than you know, and it's just a matter of experiencing things and finding out where your skills and talents are. Like I said, I thought I was bad at math. I'm not. I just
Yeah.
have success at trying it, So
Uh-huh.
try a lot of things and you'll find your strengths.
Try a lot of things and you'll find your strengths. That's great advice. And that's great advice for anyone, right? So even people who are further along in life, there's always something else to be tried. I think your example of, just try it. Consult some expertise when you need to. But there are a lot of things that we're all capable of. Wow. Well, Karl Beckstrand, thank you so much for traveling with me to the edges of Lean.
Thank you, Bella. It was a pleasure.
This is Bella Engelbach, and I'd like to thank Karl Beckstrand for being my guest on the Edges of Lean. What did you learn from this conversation? What ideas did it spark for you? We would love to hear from you. Find Karl at premiobooks.com or on Amazon, or you can connect with Karl on LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn or at leanforhumans.com, or check out my author page on Amazon, and comment wherever you watch or listen. Subscribe and tell a friend about the Edges of Lean. Please join me in exploring more of the Edges of Lean. There's a lot to learn, and check out my friends in the Lean Communicators community at leancommunicators.com. You'll find more podcasts and videos with lots of great new content every week. The Edges of Lean is written and produced by Bella Engelbach with support from Podcast Inc. This is a Lean for Humans production.